Praise be Jesus Christ, now and forever. We all know the famous quote by G.K. Chesterton that we do not want a church that will move with the world. We want a church that will move the world. Tragically, whenever the church moves with the world throughout its history, not only does the church usually look ridiculous because it poorly apes its secular bedfellows, it loses members, and it fails to evangelize. We appear to be in one of those times, with all the factors named above coming into play. Once again, it seems to be a particularly Western concept, most certainly not followed in Africa or the East. There's a peculiar lack of humility and, it seems, ability to see what Vatican II famously called the signs of the times in those who believe that worldly imitation is the road to success. In fact, it's the road to nowhere. St. Paul, in his first letter to the church in Thessalonica, writes with joy and praise for this vibrant Christian community, clearly very dear to his heart, precisely because they have not followed the spirit of the world, but shone as stars in the darkness around them. He writes in chapter 2, "As soon as you heard the message that we brought you as God's message, you accepted it for what it really is, God's message, and not some human thinking, and it is still a living power among you." So much rich meat in that verse for us to unpack this week. When the church moves with the world and speaks with the voice of the world, one thing is abundantly and painfully clear: it is not God's message. One is reminded again of the words of the Anglican divine Dean Ing, who said that the church who marries the spirit of the age will be a widow in the next. Not only is it not God's message, we might say it is an anti-gospel message. As some members of the church embrace, for example, some of the secular ideologies around gender or sexuality, it's clearly the voice of the tempter, not he who is the truth. Paul praises the Thessalonians for immediately accepting the gospel as the authentic message of God. This, just as in our day, in a world where that message was profoundly countercultural, at variance with the official policies of the state, and more importantly, risking social isolation or ostracization, or even worse. The message of the gospel, while bringing peace and joy and ultimate fulfillment, is also hard. Yet the Thessalonians saw through the veil of difficulty to the promise of good news. Human thinking, while initially and perhaps for a time intensely promising peace and joy, always ends up failing to satisfy, and with the doctrines and dogmas of the 20th century, leaving a trail of death and destruction in their wake. Paul also highlights something of critical importance for the contemporary church, because the church in Thessalonica was able to distinguish between the authentic message of the gospel, God's thinking, and the falsity of human thinking. He says the gospel is still a living power among you, a living power, a power to transform lives, to heal, yes, to cause miracles, and to see the action of the Holy Spirit descending like flames and causing the church to tremble. If that living power is not being experienced in the church, can we ask the difficult and challenging question: is it because God's message is being proclaimed, or is it because of human thinking? Brethren, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, like a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour.